Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my podcast. This is a special episode as it is the last one in my series, but don't worry, going out with a bang. Of course, as a special last episode, we have my friend and classmate Nick joining us one last time. Welcome back, Nick, and thank you for being part of this series.
Thank you for having me, Alex. I'm quite pumped for this one. We're going to wrap up this series, and we get to talk about one thing every manager botches at least once a day: communication.
Exactly. For our final insightful discussion, we're tackling managing communication. So we will be focusing on understanding perception, getting friendly with the communication process, and uncovering the hidden meanings of nonverbal cues.
Hidden meanings. It's like being a detective, but instead of fingerprints, you. How do I put this? You're looking at someone's tone of voice.
Right. I mean, it's crucial for stuff just in life, not just administration or management. But I think we will have a great discussion. We have a great one planned, and I am excited for you guys to tune in. So let's dive right into our first core concept. So, this first concept is simple yet powerful. So, it's perception. So, perception, by definition, is the process by which individuals attend to, organize, interpret, and retain information for their environments. But here's the kicker: perception is different for everyone.
That's where the trouble starts. We have to see these perception filters. It's like we have to recognize them. It's like we wear these colored novelty glasses. You'll filter out certain stimuli and pay closer attention to others. So, this is when people agree and disagree on what's actually said or understood.
Right. And I mean, a perfect example is one of the sensory perceptions, like auditory. We've both been in meetings where someone raises their voice and we instantly assume that they're angry. But in reality, they might just be excited about the new project. It's the filter of raised voice equals conflict kicking in, which is often wrong, but this is pretty common in the business world. We use the little information we have to make a quick but often inaccurate judgment about intent.
Definitely right. So, I was on the construction site and I saw this daily, especially with selective perception. If a worker consistently misses deadlines, the general contractor's filter is set to find fault. The moment that that worker is 5 minutes late, the GC will attend to and organize that one fact. They ignore the worker who was on time but is currently taking a long break. Their past experience with the worker has created a bias filter. Another classic one is vision misperception. You see a coat draped on a chair in a dark room and think it's a person. Our brain will fill the gaps with the scariest and most relevant possibility.
Exactly. And that actually brings us into our second concept, which is the communication process. So it's the process of transmitting information from one person or place to another. So you've got the sender, you have the message, the channel, the receiver, and so on.
But we don't need to bore everyone with the minor details of encoding and decoding. But let's understand the process as a whole. because it's beneficial. It will force you to think about what the receiver is doing. On the construction site, channel matters immensely. A complex safety instruction should be delivered face to face, not as a quick message. So in person, you'll have a lot more of the clarity. You'll have your body language and other factors to consider. If you choose the wrong channel, it'll be a guaranteed way to introduce noise into this process.
Right. I mean, let's say my boss emails me to call a student back about some questions. I get the email, so the message is received. When I call the student, I personally need to make it very clear what I'm saying so that when they decode the message, they don't perceive something different. I have to answer effectively to avoid more confusion. And crucially, I have to consider the student's ability to decode. If I use corporate jargon, their decoding will fail and the whole entire cycle will break.
I think the most important part of that cycle is feedback. The student says, "Oh, I understand," but they'll ask a follow up question for clarification. That closes the loop. The whole process makes it easier to relay criteria needed for work. In construction, if a laborer says, "So I need to use the 1 inch bolt instead of the half-inch bolt instead of the 3/4 inch bolt, correct?" That's a perfect feedback. They just say, "Okay, you received poor feedback and you have to push for clarification to prevent a costly mistake later."
Right. But last but not least, we have the nonverbal communication. So, nonverbal communication is any communication that does not involve words. So, the silent stuff, such as body language, facial expressions, the tone and the pitch. It may seem like tone and pitch are verbal cues, but they're actually nonverbal because they help to relay the message a little bit further.
It's often seen as a more accurate representation of what someone is truly trying to say or how they're feeling. Let's say a manager says, "I'm delighted you finished the report," but their shoulders are hunched and their tone is flat. You can probably think that they're not delighted. On a job site, nonverbal cues are critical for safety. A sudden tense posture from a crane operator tells everyone to stop immediately. That's a universal and powerful nonverbal language that bypasses any language barrier. English, Spanish, French, all that jabber jibber jabba. You'll know that they're upset. You have to be aware that your own nonverbal signs, as they are often more trusted than just your words.
Right. I mean, it's all about using the movement, the tone, the pitch to back up your words. It's, in a sense, the manager's secret weapon to decrease the effects of the filter perception. So if I want to show that I'm serious about a deadline, I'm going to use the firm tone and I'm absolutely going to maintain that eye contact. But I mean, I just want to say thank you. I mean, that was a great job walking through those concepts. But now, Nick, the interview portion. My first question for you: would you go as far as to say perception is based more on assumptions or facts?
Perception. So when you perceive something, it's what you believe that you see. You're listening to your senses. You're not thinking about it. So that's why I would relate it towards assumptions, especially in a very fast-paced work environment where you're using your senses instead of just all your cognition and organizing your thoughts because you won't really have the time to do that when you're in the active environment in the workplace. So you're gonna walk past your boss's office. Okay, so I do that. I see them frowning at their computer. Something's definitely wrong because their face is a frown. My brain would assume that maybe I messed up or they're mad at me. And these are our filters because our filters prioritize what's relevant to us, leading to assumptions. It's quicker than finding the facts because everyone always thinks about themselves very often. It's kind of human nature. So, when it's something important to you, it'll have to involve you in some kind of way. The corporate ladder will reinforce this. You're constantly trying to guess your superior's mood and intent, especially in relation to yourself, which will lead to a constant cycle of assumption based behavior.
I mean, I completely agree. Following that up, I mean, what influences could specifically alter how someone could perceive what is being stated or asked of them, just beyond all the filters?
Definitely previous experience and emotional state. All part of perception. If a manager who has a bit of a history of changing deadlines will ask me to work on a project a little bit tonight, I'll just perceive that as a firm commitment. But a manager who's always been flexible, if they ask me the same question, I'll think of it as just an option. They could push back the deadline for me, or there's no pressure because they're more of a lax person that works on a very flexible basis, almost like a structuralist company. Uh, our past will definitely dictate our present filter, just like this scenario. You can always base someone off of the history that you have with them. So I'm stressed out my final exams, then I'm thinking of everything as a threat. Even things that might not be related to school. They could be affected by the scarcity of time that is created by you having to study for these final exams. If I'm on the construction site, safety perception is everything. Like, oh, don't fall. We have safety precautions. Okay, if you're like standing on the girders of some crazy tower construction site, you're like on the skeleton of the building. Uh, they'll definitely train their employees to look out for these things, so you'll have the perception based on the training that you've received. If the general contractor will let people skip a safety check, a new employee will perceive safety rules as optional. That is previous experience altering perception with dangerous results.
That makes perfect sense. But now to switch gears, we're moving to the communication process. Do you believe both parties can always walk away with the exact same interpretation and understanding?
When I take into consideration of many people and all the different types and our positions and all the different scenarios, it's not always going to be the same. People will definitely not have the same interpretation with all the different minds. Even if you're creating some big project that you try to be as anti-controversial as possible, there will always be someone who will dislike it or protest against it. So it's not guaranteed to have the same interpretation at all. Never. People always make the same interpretations on something for years and years, even after the story is over. If you have, say, you'll have like too much noise, static in the communication process in this case, or it's actual loud noise, internal noise like preoccupation. So, for a general contractor who tries to coordinate two teams, there's always a semantic noise. The two teams use different jargon. One team's prep work is another team's finish work. You just have to aim for mutual understanding of expectations. through strong feedback and clarification, that is. Aim for functional agreement, but not exact thought replication.
I mean, that's a pretty realistic answer. So, with that, let's finish with just an extra little question on the nonverbal communication. How can people specifically misinterpret nonverbal cues in a conversation?
Easy. Cultural differences are huge. What looks like interest in one country can look aggressive in another. But even within the same culture, misinterpreting paralanguage is common. We've all gotten one email where that email felt angry because we read it in an angry tone, even though the sender was probably just typing quickly. We inject emotion when there is none. I saw a foreman who used very little facial expression. It's just his personality. But the new laborers thought he was constantly angry or dissatisfied. It made him nervous and it hurt their performance. The interpretation of his flat effect was wrong.
It's crazy. Just how everything is just perceived so differently with everybody.
Yeah, like folks of one country will be afraid of the snow maybe because they've never seen it because like maybe their country's near the equator, so global warming was something happened to climate change and it snowed there all of a sudden they wouldn't be prepared for it. Or they would do only what they heard through the internet or the news. Like, am I supposed to dress like this? It's something that they can't quite interpret as well as people who are accustomed to the snow, like those who live in Finland or Norway.
Right. I mean, a lot of people aren't hurricane ready, but everybody in Florida is always hurricane ready.
Yeah, a lot of people will not know about hurricane proof glass.
Nope.
Like
But
certain body languages too. I'm pretty sure that there is some kind of finger gesture where it's normal here, but in Britain, the UK, this could be interpreted as cursing someone, kind of like the equivalent to our middle finger.
right.
So maybe if you like uploaded a YouTube video with this, definitely not the case. It could be interpreted as hate speech by the EU, so your video could be flagged.
I
So
mean,
that's
yeah.
that's a close example of misinterpretation of someone who might come from elsewhere, and it's a normal thing for them.
Right. I mean, everybody knows a classic thumbs up, but in sign language, it actually means the number 10.
I didn't know that. See?
See, you always learn something on the podcast. But everyone, that was our last and final podcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening to our amazing discussion today. Once again, these processes, understanding perception, knowing how to properly communicate, understanding the nonverbal communication, they're crucial for businesses and will make life a whole lot easier for everyone. The biggest takeaway from talking to people who've climbed the corporate ladder is that communication is a skill you must work on daily.
It was a pleasure, Alex. And maybe another big takeaway would be we have to be active in every step of communication. Be an active listener, check your own nonverbal cues, and always assume that your filters are on, because maybe with your brain they'll always be, especially when you're bored.
Right.
The better you get at managing your perception, the more effective you'll be at every job you take.
I couldn't have said it better. Big thanks to Nick for joining and being my final guest. Like always, it is a pleasure having you, and thank you for giving us your insight into these topics today. Thank you guys for listening and have a great night.
Goodbye, everyone.